one of the core important subject in computer science and engineering branch, which is called as system software and compiler design subject. Earlier, this subject was given separately as system software and compiler design separate topics. Now, according to new scheme, it has been combined as a single entity. Together, wherein we deal with all the concept with respect to compilers as well as with respect to system software. Okay. Now, in this session, I will be covering only the contents belonging to compiler design, wherein in our syllabus it deals with 3 modules. Module 3, 4, 5 deals with compiler design concept that will be sharing or refreshing now in this today's session. In the module 3, we are learning about the introduction chapter of your compiler design, okay, followed by lexical analysis, which is one of the important and first phase of your compiler. In the module 4, we'll be dealing with complete second stage of your compilation process, and in the module 5, we'll be dealing with 3 important entities. One is related to syntax generated translation, then one more entity, intermediate code generation, and last phase of your compiler, which is called code generation. So these are the modules we'll be covering today in the session. I'm referring to the prescribed textbook of your compiler design textbook, that is by 3 authors, Aho, Ullman, and then Ravi Sethi. Okay, so this is the standard textbook of the Aho Ullman, Compilers Principles and Techniques and Tools, okay, which is belonging to second edition. Okay, this is a standard textbook from which all the information have been extracted and which we are learning from so many decades. And I'm very much thankful to IEEE Bangalore section, Gurukul series, for giving me an opportunity to present in front of you the overview of the complete 3 modules which you are going to face in the coming exam. Okay, the course outcome, what are the learnings you will be getting once you read all these 3 modules? Okay, so you will be very much well versed if you understand this subject, the important stages of your compilation process. Okay, all the stages of compilation process will be well versed, followed by you have even the system software components in the subject. So all these concepts with respect to system software entities also will be well versed, and you will be also getting a knowledge about some of the automation tools used in compiler design subject, okay, in the as a one of the implementation concept in this system software and compilation process. Overall outline of this today's session deals with why we need to study this course, what are the stages involved, overview of the compilation process, main divisions, and again subdivisions involved in each of these will be studied in detail. Okay, to start with, we need to now inform you first, okay, what is meant by compiler and why should we study this compiler. So overall, when we are talking to any end user or any other person, so we need to have a communication which is known to both of the person. Then only the communication will be easier. Otherwise, we need some of the intermediate person who knows the language belonging to both the person. So that kind of intermediator who helps you in communication between the two person is called this software called as compiler. Okay, so it gives a complete language processing technology, a complete translation from the high-level programming construct to machine understandable form is done by the intermediate, one of the important software that is called as compiler. Okay, so why it has to be learned by a computer science student. It is given as it's a core subject for computer science and engineering students. Why? It is because that it gives you complete information about all the stages, what is happening. Once you give in your editor or once you save this program, high-level language input program, okay, the background process, what is happening, and before you get the executable file and try to start accepting your input to generate the required output, the background working, how it is done, how it is converted into machine understandable form. So that should be known by a computer science engineer, which may not be compulsory for other engineers. Hence, computer science engineers must know how to design, how to develop, and how to modify or enhance the existing compiler, how to maintain the existing compiler for any type of programming language construct. And it also gives you like confidence. Once you know the basic stages of compiler, it gives you a confidence within yourself that it is easy for us to develop any new compiler for any upcoming programming languages also. If not whole compiler, at least one stage of your compiler can be developed by understanding each and every stage activity. Hence, computer science engineers should understand and should work upon to understand the stages, the background working of the compilation process. Okay, so once you understand that, you will have a complete control and confidence about complete language processing system used for any kind of software development. Then overall, still continuation of why compilers are required. Compilers are the intermediate softwares for for the communication between two different entities are used everywhere. Okay, it may be used as a parser for HTML browser, okay, or it may be used to convert or to generate machine code for any high level from the any part of the high level language, or you may work for software testing part, or you may work for program optimization part, or to detect any kind of malicious code in your input programming language. Or it may also give you information about how to design any new computer architecture. Once you analyze the existing architecture, it gives you information about how to create any new architectures, or evolution of architectures can be done with the help of this knowledge of compilers. And also, not only in the software development, it is also helping you to evolve yourself in the hardware circuit designing also. Nowadays, we are shifting ourselves to the hardware synthesis processing language, wherein we are going to simulate the actual working of any kind of hardware circuits with the help of different softwares. For that also, the working on that and to generate output for that also, we need any relevant type of software. For that, again, compilation process is made use of. So that type of simulation, we call it as compiled simulation. So any type of VHDL simulation can be easily done. Okay, no interpretation is required. Hence, we get an output at a faster rate. These are some of the reasons why we need to go for compilation. So it is used in every programming construct. Any type of programming language makes use of one or the other way compilation process to convert your input to generate the required output. Okay. So now, what is the motivation behind this? So language processing is one of the important construct or component in every kind of programming. N number of system softwares and application softwares are being developed right from second generation computer system till the current era. Okay, so in all the development of any type of system software or application software, we need the help of compilation process. Even in the development or evolution of operating system also, particularly command line processing, we need the help of the compiler, one or the other help of compiler. Or else, even this compilation process is also required for query language processing. Answering for the queries, that processing of that query is made available and is made compatible or comfortable with the help of system software or compiler. Okay, and not only in that, one of the important editing tool, report generating tool, LaTeX, also makes use of this compilation process or particularly system software process, and it can also be adopted in software quality assurance and testing. So these are the motivation why we need to study this particular subject. Now, when we go for history of compiler, it started with the first generation where we started coding using zeros and ones. Then we again, because of tedious process, we shifted ourselves to assembly level language notation. Then from assembly level language notation, we shifted ourselves to high level languages. In that, n number of high level languages we ever started. We don't have exact count of high level languages. We started with A, then evolved to B, then C, and n number. Then we shifted ourselves to object orientation. There are many other scientific application softwares like Fortran, then other Pascal. Okay, you have n number of high-level languages which is being adopted for different types of processing or different types of conversion. So in all these, we are using one or the other softwares. Okay, mainly we are dividing our system software as compilers and interpreters. Okay, we are not that much focusing on interpreter, but mainly we are focusing mainly on compiler because it is having a streamlined, stringent steps or process. So knowing that, it becomes easy that can be adopted even to interpreter also, which adopts almost same process as compiler. Okay. Now, we know that when we are in the high level language or in the third generation computers, we had come across n number of high level languages. Out of that, Lisp is also one of the programming language. At that time, we made use of both interpretation as well as compilation depending on the supporting language. Okay, so interpreter is used for one particular platform for developing, and compilers are used for deploying that particular software. Okay, now, so you are using both the technology as and when it is required. And we have one of the object-oriented language called Java, wherein we again use both compilation and interpretation. So hence it is called hybrid compiler. So hence we need to now know the difference between compiler and interpreter. Before that, we need to know the definition of compiler first. So hence some languages are completely dedicated to compilation, and some languages are completely scripted. All scripting languages are completely deviated to interpretation process, and some languages uses both the technology. Okay. Now we go for the first successful compiler, which took 18 man years to complete. Okay, and it was done using during 1950s range. At the time, this was done for successful compiler was developed using assembly language notation. That is done for Fortran formulation based or scientific calculation compile. Okay, now, so knowing this, the stages involved in that compiler, it has given us glimpse for today's modern compiler also. The stages involved in that compiler is being adopted even now in the development of any modern compilers also. It is also having the same stages involved in the today's available compiler also. But it took n number of years because there was no ready-made tool at that time available, and there was no supporting technology at that time. So it took so many years. Now, before we go for exactly compilation process, we need to know the complete language processing system is being divided into n number of stages. Okay, broadly it is been classified into 4 different stages. The rectangles are considered as the stages, and above and below are the inputs and the outputs provided. So when we go for language processing system, first any high level language program will be fed to the first stage of your processing system called preprocessor, wherein what are the shorthand description given in your input program will be expanded, and it will be the number of lines will be increased. That stage we call it as pre-processing. Then we get the output in the form of same language, which we wherein you have expanded all the shorthand description. Hence we call the output as modified source program. That modified source program is an input to the compilation process, and after that compilation we are getting target assembly level language program as an output of compilation process. Okay, instead of directly machine understandable form, we are generating output as a target code as assembly level language form after compilation, because efficiency will be higher when you restrict yourself as target code as assembly level language notation. Then we need the help of additional software called assemblers, wherein it takes the assembly level language notation and converts into relocatable machine code. Since it is relocated to multiple locations, we need the help of additional softwares called linkers and loaders, wherein it links all the library files what is required, and all the relocatable object files have to be fit into the main memory by the loader, so which is ready for execution. Then once it is executed, you will be getting it is ready for execution means exe file is ready. Then for that you can provide any type of relevant input and generate the required output. So these are all the stages involved in the language processing system. Now we restrict ourselves to compilation stages. The compilation process is mainly divided into 6 important stages, and the last one is an optional one. Okay, so first and foremost stage is called lexical analysis, which is also called scanning, wherein it reads your input program and converts your input program into a number of tokens. Okay, then syntax analysis will convert your token into a well-formed tree structure called parse tree or syntax tree. That stage is also called parsing. Then that is given as an input to third stage called semantic analysis, wherein we check for the parse tree generated and check for any mismatch in the parse tree or not. If any mismatch is there, that will be taken care in the semantic analysis. Then we take the modified parse tree in convert into standard intermediate code in the intermediate code generation. Then standard intermediate code is again undergone with code optimization, wherein we are going to reduce the intermediate code what is generated. Optimize or redundancy will be eliminated in the intermediate code. Then that modified intermediate code is given to code generation, which converts into the required assembly level language notation. Then it may be based upon one more level of optimization you can perform for the generated assembly level language code. So to create an efficient assembly level language code. These are the main stages involved in the phases of compile. Now, this again depicted in the flow chart wise, wherein you are giving the input as the form of source program and you are generating the assembly level language at the end. But common repository, we have left and right two components. Error handling tool, which is adopted in all the stages of your compilation, and symbol table, which is made use of for all the stages. Once we load your input program, a particular related variable and its data constants have to be informed, and it has to be stored somewhere. That the data repository, that information where we adopt is called symbol table. Symbol table will give that information stored all the variables, its initialized values, modified values, okay, and intermediate values. As and when you upgrade yourself in the processing of your compilation, all these will be stored in the symbol table and it will be fetched by the further phases as and when it is required. Now we go for the first and foremost phase. Before going for that, as an overview, compilation is mainly defined as conversion of your high-level language source program into required target code. So here we can directly go for machine level language code or assembly level language code as a target. But here compilation along with the help of additional software, then only you can go for the machine code if you want efficiency. So you are having an error handling and symbol table management also. Okay, it generates the required and correct target code and manage all the variables and storage and its retrieval, and then so it tries to have a guarantee that required object code will be available for assembling. Now, the complete compilation process, what we mentioned, phases of compiler, is being broadly classified into two different stages called front end and back end, wherein front end is incorporating 4 stages and back end is incorporating 2 to 3 stages. Okay. Now, high level language input program is fed to first 4 stages, which will generate a standard intermediate code as an output. That output is called intermediate representation of the intermediate code generation. That is given to last 2 stages, which will generate the required target code. Okay. So for simplicity, we are dividing broadly into 2 different stages. Internally, it will be having the same 6 to 7 stages what is required. So this will be helping you to divide your compilation process also into a number of passes to generate efficient and better code. So this has been again broadly classified. The front end is indicated in first block and back end is indicated in the red block. So lexical analyzer, parser, semantic analyzer, and helps you to generate an intermediate code in the front end, and back end code optimizer and code generator will be done in back end stage to generate the required target code. For common entity, we have symbol table. So this is the overall complete stage of your compilation in detail. Okay, high level language input program, which is divided into, which is given to lexical analyzer, which is the first phase of your compiler, wherein the target is to generate different types of tokens present in your input program. Then from the syntax analyzer, we are generating a parse tree, and then from that parse tree, we are creating a modified parse tree if any mismatch is there in the semantic analysis. Then that modified syntax tree is converted into intermediate code by the help of intermediate code generation. Then that intermediate representation is also modified with the help of machine dependent code optimizer. Then whatever you will be getting is still it will be in the form of intermediate code only, that is given to a code generator, which will generate the required assembly level language plus b star 10 is given to first phase of compiler, wherein you are generating a list of tokens. Result is considered as one variable. All the variables are considered as identifiers. That is considered as and when you scan the input from left to right, first variable is considered as ID1, and that is saved and created in the first row in the newly created symbol table for this current expression. And all its data will be available in that particular rows with respect to different columns in that symbol table. Then equal is a symbol, that is also a token. Then second next variable is a, that is considered as a second identifier. ID2 is a name assigned for it. Then plus is another operator which will not be saved in the symbol table. Only all the IDs a and b will be stored in the symbol table. Then operators will be made, a unique symbol is assigned, so the tokens are also given the same name. Then followed by the constant directly it is being made use of. This is the output of lexical analyzer. Then this output is given to next stage called syntax analyzer, wherein these all the tokens will be assigned with will be converted into well-formed tree structure by knowing the notations of context-free grammar. So wherein first we need to give preference for the operator which is having higher order, higher precedence level. So star should be evaluated first. So that is coming as a lowermost level. Okay, so star is evaluated for that. ID3 and 10 are the arguments. That is given to the next level plus with the left hand side argument ID2. Then this is assigned to equality operator which is called assignment operator to the LHS variable ID1. So this is the output of syntax analyzer. Then this is given to as an input to third phase called semantic analyzer, wherein we see that when you are comparing ID1, ID2, ID3, all these are obvious. If you assume that all these are a floating variable and 10 is an integer, so you have all the floating variables, and with respect to compared with integer, then when you perform any operation, the result will be truncated or it will be approximated. We want exact computation value. What we need to do, all this integer also should be converted into required floating point variable. So hence, so we are converting this into float or into real, whatever is required, that conversion has to happen. Okay, into real it's been done because all these are real data types. Okay, then after that conversion is done, we go for multiplication. Then we get an exact result what is predicted. Then we go for normal addition. Then that result of RHS expression is assigned to LHS variable ID1. So this is the task done by semantic analyzer. Then that output modified parse tree is given to intermediate code generation, wherein you are converting that into step-by-step intermediate code. So first step we need to do that conversion process for that given constant into real, that is assigned to one temporary variable LHS temp1. Then it is given to multiplication. Okay, ID3 is a left hand side operator and the previous step result temp1 is the RHS operand for multiplication, that is assigned to one more temporary variable temp2. Then next addition operation has to perform, wherein ID2 is the LHS argument and the previous step result temp2 is the RHS argument. Then we are getting the then it is assigned to one more temporary variable. So whole RHS result is available in temp3. Then that temporary result is assigned to the given LHS variable ID1. Then this result, this tree address code is a representation from what we are extracting this information. This is standard intermediate code output is again given to next stage called code optimizer. Till here it is the front end output. Now we are starting with the back end process, wherein code optimization we try to see that so into real will not be done a number of times. Once it is processed, it will be done and the result is kept ready only once. So that can be minimized by directly using that constant value or integer into real value. So 10.0 it has been assigned as floating value, and that is done directly for multiplication. So instead of temp1 directly I am getting the process result of into real, so that is been assigned to temp1. Okay, next step we are multiplying, so that is required, then followed by addition. So these two are required, but what is the necessity of this last step? Temp3 is directly assigned, it can be assigned to ID1. So you can minimize this line also. So you can minimize the last line by assigning ID2 plus temp2 directly to ID1. So that is being hidden here. So you are giving that temp1 result directly for the next step. So then last step can be reduced and you can get back the information directly in the ID1 as a LHS variable. So 4 lines is reduced to 2 lines. So that is what is called code optimization. That optimized code or intermediate code is given to code generator, wherein we are using efficient way of assembly level language notation depending on type of architecture. Either if you are using 8086 or 80286, that particular architecture we are using, and we are generating the required assembly level language code. Now first step is we need to load one of the variables. Multiplication is done with directly the constant 10.0 with the register component present in R2, and then before you go for addition, we need to load one of the registers saved in R1 content. Then you can perform the addition for contents of R2 and contents of R1. Finally, the RHS result will be available in R1, that is moved back to ID1, LHS variable ID1. So this is how we are generating the assembly level language code as a target code. You can create any number of other methodologies. Instead of move you can go for load f and then store f here. This is one way, and that is another way. You can use according to your convenience, and you can have one more column wherein each and every operation, whatever you are performing, highlight way in which particular register that particular operation result is available. That notation also can be made use of as per the prescribed author Holman. And this is a practical application when you are developing any new compiler. Then you are typing a program in one of the editor, and it is given to compiler, and it is we are continuing with the using any of the editor. We are able to type your high level language input program. From that we are getting assembly level language code as a target code, and we need the help of assembler to convert into machine understandable form. And since it will be relocatable, we need the help of linkers and loaders to generate into required part of the memory to generate efficient object code. Efficient machine level language code. Then we also need the help of debugger as and when the error arises, when you are not able to load into the free space of the main memory. If any error is there, we need to go back, make the correction, and verify each and every step of your compilation process. So this is how the practical application works. Now we go for the second chapter, wherein it deals with lexical analyzer. Okay, so now we start analyzing each and every phase in detail. We start with the first stage, which is dealt separately in the lexical analyzer chapter. So what is the role played by lexical analyzer? The main role played by the lexical analyzer is to convert your high level language input program into n number of tokens. It reads character by character and convert that into group of relevant characters first as lexeme. Then that lexeme is transferred into required tokens, wherein any token will have two components, name of a token followed by attribute value, and followed by that immediately we are going to create a symbol table to store all the list of identifiers. Okay. So that is done in the first stage, and along with that it is also doing that before you generate the tokens, it is removing all the comments which is available in your input program, all the white space character, tab, new line, enter key, whatever white space characters are there, that will be eliminated. Then if you are not able to analyze the group of characters into well-formed token, then proper error messages also will be raised. So that is also done by the lexical analyzer. So this is a schematic view of lexical analyzer. It accepts the program, and as and when it is identifying the token, it is passed to the next stage, and again it is invoking a method or function called get next token, which will be informed to lexical analyzer that it is ready to accept next token. So as and when it is generating the token, and it will be returned to the parser. This process repeats continuously, so until the complete program is scanned through and all the tokens are being separated and it is being informed to parser. Next, the remaining process will be continued. Okay, now, so the common table, what is initialized and what is created is symbol table. So now the important concept involved in this lexical analyzer are identifying in the three important terms called token, pattern, and lexeme. So there is a correlation between one to one. So everything has to be defined in relation with respect to other. So first, when you are reading your group of characters from your input program, So that group of characters, first it has to be converted into this one standard format called lexeme. When you will decide that it is a valid lexeme, when it is matching with the predefined pattern, then we are able to identify that this group of characters is considered as identifier. Then only, or else if it is a keyword, then only we call it as it is a valid character group of characters called lexeme. So hence it is a group of characters from your input program which matches the given pattern. Then how do you define pattern? It is a description of the form which is written using regular expression notation that different lexemes will take. It can be group of characters belonging to constant or belonging to identifiers or keywords or any particular relational operators. All these patterns will be defined in the form of regular expressions. Then, so once you are identifying the group of characters as lexeme with respect to pattern, then we are able to transfer that lexeme into token, wherein any token name, if it is having two components. First is token name followed by attribute value, wherein this is optional. Name of a token is compulsory. It's a unique symbol what we assign for each and every identifier or each and every operators, which helps you convey some information for the further phase. Okay, attribute value will give detailed description about that token name, which is not compulsory for every type of token. Okay, this example, the formal way. So all the tokens, just a minute. Okay, these are all the list of tokens with respect to few categories. Any literals, any constants, any type of identifiers, any relational operators, or any group of characters like IF. If you have characters I followed by F, then group of characters IF, if it is matched with the keyword, then it is considered as one lexeme. Then group of characters ELSE is considered as one lexeme. Then less than followed by equal to, that is considered as one lexeme. Similarly, other types. Now we take E is equal to MC square is one example. Now how many tokens we can extract here? First group of letter is E. It is scanned through, and then it is having no token type called as identifier is a token name, and then it is having an attribute value. That attribute value is nothing but a pointer to symbol table entry for that identifier. So together it is having two entities. ID is a token name and pointer to maybe 1, 2, 3, wherein which row is assigned for that identifier. Usually leftmost side is assigned with 1, ID comma 1 can be considered as is the token name. Then assignment operator straight away equal to is a token name. Then second variable ID comma row number 2. So ID comma 2 is the next storage or the token name for M. Then star operator, star itself can be token. Then ID comma 3. Then followed by exponential, okay, symbol. Then followed by constant. So number, if we can call it as number, what type of number? It is integer value 2. So these are the tokens. From this statement, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types of tokens are being generated. So to help in this segregation of input program into tokens, we are using a concept called buffering, which is also called input buffering. Input program is first stored into a buffer, wherein we restrict ourselves the size of buffer as 4096 bytes, which is limited to the size of your disk size. Okay, we use standard 2 buffer scheme. Standard 2 buffer scheme wherein each is maintained with the same 4096 bytes. Okay, we need how do you scan through your input program with the help of this buffer. Okay, we need the temporary storage to load your input program in the buffer. Okay, so it deals character by character in the buffer, and we are using some special symbols to indicate the end of your buffer to come to know that whether we have stopped reading the contents of input program or not. So that we'll see with the help of example. Consider this example. So E is equal to MC square is considered as a input expression statement, wherein to scan your input program, first always, as I said, it is divided into two buffers, first buffer and second buffer, wherein each buffer is of same size, and each buffer is divided into 4096 bytes, wherein each byte or each cell is occupying one character. Okay, now first part of your 4096 bytes will be loaded, then remaining part of your input program is loaded into second buffer. Okay, so once you finished first buffer component, then you need to start scanning your second buffer component. And then still if your input program is pending, we need to erase the content of first buffer, reload the contents with the remaining components of your input program. For that process to help in, we have two pointers called as lexeme begin and forward pointer. Lexeme begin always starts with the leftmost character of your input program, and forward pointer also to start with will be starting with the leftmost character, but forward pointer only keeps moving ahead. Okay, when it as and when it reads the equality symbol, when it points to equality symbol, it stops here. The group of characters between lexeme begin and forward pointer will be considered as valid lexeme when it is matched with any one of the pattern. Then again, the wherever forward pointer is there, that lexeme begin will jump to the same pointer. Again, it stops moving. When it starts pointing to the forward pointer, jumps to the next location, it stops here. The group of characters between equal and m without including that particular pointer will be again considered as matching with a particular pattern. If it is equal, it is matching with the operator, then that is extracted, and then so again forward pointer where it is pointing to lexeme begin should jump into. In this way it keeps on moving. When first buffer is over, it has to jump to the next buffer till how long? Until it come across end of your input program. The termination is indicated by a sentinel called end of file. You can use any of the notation. One of the notation what we are using is EOF, that is indicating end of file. Now, in first scheme, you can use only in one place end of file, or also in other way we can also indicate other symbols in two other places also. What are those places? To indicate end of your first buffer as well as to indicate your end of your second buffer. To avoid confusion, we can use the same symbol end of file EOF character only in three places: end of first buffer, end of second buffer, as well as end of your file. Now, when you are implementing, so this is the first task to be done. Write a switch case to indicate where your forward pointer is moving. So that is done with the help of C++ code. If a forward pointer is at the end of first buffer, it means that okay, I need to jump my forward pointer to the beginning of second buffer, reload the contents of second buffer to start inputting the remaining contents. Suppose else, if your forward pointer is at the end of second buffer, what it means? I need to jump to the leftmost point position to the beginning cap position to the first buffer. What we need to do before jumping? Reload the contents what is present in the first buffer. Else, so these two jumpings will be keeping on rotating until you finish all the reading. Else, it means that when you come across EOF, it means that that is the end of your input program. Okay, so then once it is done, it means that you are terminating the process of lexical analysis. You are coming out. Remaining, there will be other characters which will be given for scanning. This is one type switch case for forward pointer. Similarly, other characters will be there in a complete lexical analysis process. So this is one such input statement for token recognition, wherein you are having here. You are having a given high-level language input statement in the form of if-else structure. First step is to identify all the regular expression involved for the different types of information present in this statement. I need to segregate since I have given ID and number regular expression has to be defined, which will accept integer, exponential, as well as fractional. Then, whenever this regular expression is assigned to some LHS variable, LHS component, then it becomes regular definition. Okay, when you are writing these digits, I need to define with respect to one more regular expression that is assigned a new name called digits. Then what is this digit is having? 0 to 9 number, any one representation of 0 to 9. Then when it is an identifier, the standard regular expression is letter first position or letter or digit for remaining position. That can accept capital or small letter. Then all the other keywords, if, then, else, and types of relational operators. RELOP is including 6 types of relational operators. Then, if any white space characters are there in your input statement, that blank or tab or new line, any number it can be there. So that also we are writing a regular definition. Once these regular definitions are written, now I need to extract valid lexeme and convert into token name. If any attribute value are there for that particular token name, that also should be highlighted. In my input statement, of all the white space characters, it will be ignored, and keyword if itself is a token name, no attribute value. Then similarly for other keywords then and else. If it is an identifier, the token name is standard name called ID, but the separation will be made with the help of attribute value, which gives a pointer to the symbol table entry, row number 1 or 2 or 3. Then all other constants, then token name is also that particular name itself number. Then for particular, you can have pointer to not to the symbol table entry. It goes to the other type of table called literal table. All the constants can be loaded into another table called literal table. Then all the relational operators. For that, the common token name is extracted as rel. And how do you separate? By the symbolic notation indicating uniqueness with respect to which separates one to another. A less than LT, LE indicates less than equal to, NE, then GT, GE. Okay. These are all the ways to separate one relational operators with respect to other. This is how we are segregating first. And next step, we are implementing this in the form of automata representation. As we know, in the automata representation, we have nodes and then edges. Nodes are indicated by the circles, which will be having an initial state called start state. Then it will accept giving some input to jump to the next state with the help of edges. Then it will be going for next other intermediate n number of states before you reach the target state. Now, in our relop, you have 6 types. Whenever first character is less than, then it is going for next state. If your first character is less than, it goes to the state number 1. Once after that, it may be having equality or greater than symbol. When it is reading less than immediately followed by equal to symbol, then it is going for state number 2, wherein the token extracted is no relop. And what is its speciality? What is the specific type of relop? It is less than followed by equal to. It means LE is a token name. Okay, so the double circle indicates that this is a final state. The same notation what we have used in automata theory. Similarly, if it is less than followed by greater than, it indicates it's a token belonging to not equal to. This is using a Pascal notation. So hence notation used is less than followed by greater than symbol indicates not equal to. Then once you have one symbol less than followed by nothing else, this is indicated by other characters, because forward pointer has to move ahead one step ahead to indicate that it has not come across any other character. Then the token extracted is only one symbol, that is less than. But it's not but you should not include the other character what is read through. It can be all other alphanumeric or any other special symbol. But actual symbol we should not be including this. We ignoring that it is available only in this state number 1. But we are mentioning this state number 4 as final state. That is indicated by a special symbol called retract pointer star, which indicates that it's not the actual final state, it's a virtual final state. Actual symbol is available one state beyond where it is coming from that. Wherein the group of character what is reached in that is considered as a valid token. We should ignore the contents present in other. And similarly, if your first character instead of less than, if it is equal to, it's going for state number 5, wherein you have only one token, so it is equal. Then whenever first symbol, whatever you are reading is greater than, again you have two options. Greater than followed by equal to symbol if you are read, it is going for one more final state. The token name extracted is GE, greater than equal to. And once you read greater than, then if you are not having any other symbol, we are reading other characters, then whatever state number you are mentioning, it's not the actual final state, it's a virtual. So hence we need to go one step beyond to extract that symbol is greater than. The token name extracted is GT. So since it is not a exact final state, we call it as with the help of retract pointer. So the actions, what is the output is mentioned here with the help of return function. That will be returned to the parser, to the next stage of compiler. Now, so this is another set of tokens to be extracted from that high-level language statement. We read now only relop. Now next state, it starts from 0 to 8. We went off for relop. Now 9 onwards, it's starting from for the next set of identifiers, letter or digit, then followed by other characters. Once you read other characters, then only we can come to know that letter or digit is ended. The token extracted is get the token and install into identifier. Install that what type of identifier into the symbol table if it is encountered for the first time. If it is already encountered, just return the pointer to pass that information to the parser. Get that token name and then install into symbol table. These are the activities done in this identifier transition diagram. Now, you need to write all the transition diagrams in the same way, but along with that, it has to be converted into actual source code by using any high-level language construct. So that here we are having a C++ source code to implement one such example of ReLOP transition diagram, wherein you have 0 to 8 states. The states will be indicated as that many cases. Here it's a get relop is a function name. In that we are creating an object of type relop and it is returning to the variable called return token. This is an infinite while loop and there is a switch state from 0 to 8. In the first state, what we need to do, what we need to take care is get the next character. Okay. First character, the characters are read through next character function. Then, if it is less than, the first position is less than, then where we are jumping, it's going for state number 1. That is been called. If it is having after that equal symbol, where we are going, it is going for state number 5. Otherwise, where it is going, if it's a greater than symbol, it's going for state number 6. Okay, that has been given. Else, other than 3 options from state number 0, we don't have any other option. So we are calling a fail function which deals with error recovery routine. It's not a valid lexeme, so it is being called with the error recovery function. So this is the switch case for 0. Similarly, we need to write the switch case for all other cases. We'll just take one example of last final state, wherein we are having here, we are extracting a token called GT. So we are calling a retract function because it's not actual final state. Indicates that it has to go previous to that, where it is coming from. So state number 6 is having the symbol. So what is the token name? Its attribute is greater than and return the token called relop. Okay, return the token name and its attribute value to the parser. This is how it's been implemented using any of the high level language construct. Now, when you are doing an automation of this lexical analysis process, it is done with the help of ready-made tool called Lex. So this is the automated that is built-in library available in your Linux platform. Okay, we need to write your input program using .l lexical specification, and it is given input to the Lex compiler, wherein it is converted into standard C form, common C form called lex.yy.c. Since it's a C form, it can be then applied with respect to any C compiler to generate the exe form called /edato. Once this exe file is ready, you can provide any type of input to generate required type of token for your Lex specification. Any Lex program, when you are writing, it is having the structure wherein it will be having 3 sections. First one will be a declaration part, wherein it is separated with respect to other section with the help of percentage. In the declaration, we are going to have a header file listing all the variables initialized. And then in the transition rules, we are having 2 partition wherein we are having pattern and action, then followed by again separation, then followed by main part or user subroutine part. Now we will take one example. This is a till you come across percentage. This is a declaration part where you have this manifest constant. Anything between this will be taken as it is. Directly it will be converted into C form. Definition of all the relop constants indicated by percentage open bracket between to percentage closing bracket. Then you are having all the information, okay, followed by what are the regular expressions you are defining. Okay. What are the type of information you are providing? These are all the declarations you are providing. Digit indicates what regular expression, ID indicates letter followed by letter or digit. Okay, what type of white space characters? All these regular definitions are defined. Till here it is called declaration part. So regular expression and its new name, which is called regular definitions, are defined. Then here it exactly starts with the rule section called transition rules. The rules are defined again using regular expression notation. Then we are extracting here, if you encounter I followed by F, so we are just returning that token as IF in the form of action. This column is called action part, this column is called pattern. The patterns are defined and corresponding action to be invoked, which gives the information to the parser. Okay, that will be saved in the default variable called YYL val. Okay, then followed by the user subroutine section, wherein uh, wherein you have main program, wherein your every program should call compulsory a unique function called YVLX in the main program. Along with that, if you have any other user defined function like install id, install num, all these are also supporting function which has to be written in the user subroutine or auxiliary function section. Now, this is the part, till now we have done with the first module, that is module 3 description. Now we are going for module 4. Module 4 is completely dealing with the fourth chapter of your compiler textbook, syntax analysis. So after lexical analyzer generates a list of tokens either manually through automated tool lex, then that information has to be passed to second stage of compiler called syntax analyzer or parser. So that all the tokens have to be converted into well-formed tree structure called syntax tree or parse tree in correlation with the information present in symbol table. Then it is given to remaining phases. So that is called rest of front end. So this is a diagrammatic representation of syntax analysis. What are the most common programming errors in the complete compilation process? List of errors identified in lexical analysis, misspelling of all the keywords and identifier. In the syntax analysis, it may be with respect to wherever it is required semicolon if you have given comma, wherever it is required small bracket if you have given closing bracket, or instead of flower bracket if you have given a square bracket. All these are called syntactic error. Semantic error are the mismatch between operators and operands, and logical errors are any if you instead of giving a single equal to if you have given double equal. So all these are called logical errors. Then, and to overcome from all these syntactic errors, we are having some standard error recovery strategies. First and foremost, in syntax analysis, what we are coming across is to raise a immediately informative error message to the to the end user to detect immediately and correct the program and recompile. Or else, different other error recovery strategies are discard all other tokens in your input program until you come across the next set of tokens as valid tokens called synchronizing token. Second approach is remove all, keep on deleting n number of tokens until you are able to perform some local correction by yourself. That is called phrase level. Wherever you are required to insert comma, then insert it. Wherever you want to delete any semicolon, that can be deleted. Wherever you want to transpose few adjacent characters, that can be done. All these kind of some local corrections can be done in this phrase level. Then, along with the grammar definition, you can include some of the production rules for indicating different types of errors. That type of error productions, along with the given grammar, are called error production. These are all the strategies which you can use for correcting the errors in particularly syntax analysis stage. Now, as we know that the notation and convention, what we are using in context-free grammar is the G is equal to VTPS. In syntax analysis, CFG, we have already studied completely this particular concept in automata theory subject as separate chapter, context-free grammar, wherein we consider G is equal to the four tuples representation VTPS. What is this? V indicates non-terminals, and then T indicates terminals, P indicates production, and S indicates start symbol. Okay, as we see here, the arithmetic expression CFG productions are written. E is the start, E indicated as expression is the LHS variable, and it is being divided into is being assigned to RHS, wherein you have some of the body of this RHS we call it as body of the production, and then a connection between LHS to RHS is done by arrow mark. You can have both variable and terminal. The terminals are here are plus and minus, star and division, open and closing small brackets, as well as ID. Okay. Then the LHS, whatever you call it as, here are variables. And the complete thing is called production. Out of that, one of the symbol what we start with is called start symbol. This is notation what we use in context-free grammar. Now, we know that in context-free grammar, we are having some restriction. Whenever you try to create a grammar, after you create, there may be some mistakes in the created grammar. So that may be reflected in obtaining two different parse trees or two different leftmost derivation or two different rightmost derivation process. So that we have observed in the automata theory itself. Okay, when you want efficient grammar to be taken into consideration in your parsing, then that should be free from ambiguity process. How do you identify that is generating, that's a given grammar is ambiguous grammar? If you are creating two different parse tree, as we have seen here, in this if expression statement, if ICTS or if else structure, it is for the given string, it is given two different parse trees. So hence we conclude that it is a ambiguous grammar. So we need to, how do you rewrite the grammar? Rewrite the grammar in such a way that it should not be able to produce two different parse trees. Okay, so hence that input grammar should be rewritten in any other way. So we have rewritten in modified way, so that for the same string it is not possible for second parse tree to be obtained. This is called converting ambiguous to unambiguous to remove ambiguity. And once that is done, then your grammar should be free from one more concept called left recursion. Before you go for any type of parse tree construction, your grammar should be free from ambiguity. Your grammar should be free from left recursion also. Okay, if your grammar is having leftmost variable and the rightmost variable after arrow same variable, leftmost position of before and after arrow is having same variable, then it is called, it is suffering from left recursion. What do you need to do? It has to be rewritten in such a way that first you take beta, then introduce a new variable of the same type, a dash or a prime. Then what that a prime should have? Remaining components alpha, then again include a same variable or epsilon. This is a rewritten way wherein you can make sure that at any time the same LHS corresponding to RHS is not appearing in the RHS immediately. This is a one alpha and one beta substitution. The same thing if you have n number of alpha and n number of beta, this is modified for huge number of alpha and beta. First we need to take all the beta components, beta 1, a prime, beta 2 till the last beta. Then again a prime tending to alpha 1, a prime till the alpha m, a prime or epsilon. Then, okay, next we are taking this example. When you are considering this, when you see that LHS A and RHS A is same. Okay, but here there is one more second level of left recursion. What is that? A is assigned again back to S, S is assigned to A and A is assigned to S. What we can do is this, we can to remove that problem, we can expand this S by the S production. What is done here? All the S is replaced by A first for the first production and then end by D. Then again you have B, terminal B again end by D. So then it is the second production is been expanded, then that is given to for removal of left recursion. Okay, once that is done, we can take all this. This is A, then alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2. So based on that, you are removing which is free from left recursion. Okay, there is one more problem. As I said, there are three problems before you go for parse tree construction. First is removal of ambiguity. Second is removal of left recursion. Next important problem faced by your grammar is left factoring. Okay, this is a third problem wherein in the RHS of your production for any LHS variable, if you have part of your production repeated in multiple places, alpha is repeated multiple in RHS of your production, but unique component is also there called beta 1, beta 2. Okay, at that time what we need to do is the same LHS variable is been assigned and a common entity is extracted, then introduce a new variable a prime. That new variable tends to the specific component of both. The standard example for this is the if-else structure arithmetic expression. Then what we need to do is when you see this if expression then statement is common. Rest all you have remaining entity. So what we need to do, if expression then statement is extracted first, then introduce a new variable as statement prime. That statement prime tends to else statement or epsilon. This is how it has to be rewritten. Now, once all these prerequisites are done, then the rewritten modified output of that rewritten grammar is input for your different types of parsing. To build a parse tree, well-defined parse tree in syntax analysis, we have standard two types. One is called as top-down parsing and second approach is bottom-up parsing. You have one more approach, third approach called universal parsing, which is an absolute method what we are not following nowadays. So first to start with, we have a top-down parsing. Why it is called out top-down parsing? Always we are constructing a parse tree from the start symbol of your grammar till you reach all the characters of your given string at the last level. It means it's following a pre-order. and it is been obtained using derivation process, particularly leftmost derivation process. Hence, it is called a top-down approach. Okay. So here starts with the start symbol. Each and every production what give according to given grammar, it has to be replaced step by step in the derivation process and try to obtain a required parse tree, reaching all the characters finally in your parse tree. Example. So your arithmetic expression grammar, after removing ambiguity, after removing left recursion problem, okay, then this is a modified one. Now we need to create a parse tree using top-down approach for the string id plus id star id. How do you obtain that? We again see that in your grammar from E you are having T dash, only one option. Then you have what we need to do, you have two options, but I want plus. So I'm using this T is replaced by what? Before you go for that, how it has been extracted. Here E is replaced by this. Then our next step again T has been expanded to ft dash. Then ft dash in that leftmost variable, since we are following a LMD process or leftmost derivation process, out of these two leftmost only has to be replaced. From T, we are getting ft dash. From F and T dash, I need to process F only. F is replaced by ID because I don't want braces. Then, what is that I need to do for next one? After ID, I need plus operator, but it is not been obtained here easily. So in this, so I will replace by epsilon. Then again, you have one more variable called E dash. In that E dash, I'll be having only two productions, but I want plus, so I'll be calling plus TE dash. Okay, then from plus TE dash, I have two variables. Take the leftmost variable, I need to replace plus is already obtained. Then I need to replace F. F is replaced by ID. Then again you have got T dash. After plus I want star. So from T dash I have star FT dash. So that is been produced. Again I need to take into consideration F. F is replaced by ID. Then F dash, that is T dash. What we have? T dash you have. I already what is required. All the characters are been obtained. Then replace last T dash by epsilon. In this way, depending on what is required to obtain this given string, based on trial and error method only, you to replace them. Blindly, if you keep on replacing, you will not be able to create a well-defined top-down parse tree. So let us see which particular part of your productions is suitable to obtain this particular level of your parse tree. We started from start symbol and reach all the characters one after the other from LHS corner till the LHS corner. If you count all the terminals ID plus ID star ID, this is the yield or output of your parse tree. This type of approach is called top-down parsing, reaching the characters of your given string at the last step. Now, to get the top-down parsing, we have two different approaches. So one is recursive descent parsing, next is predictive parsing or LL1 parsing. What is meant by recursive? It indicates that to obtain a given string from the start symbol, the same function is called again and again, hence it's called recursive. For one variable, you are defining one function. So that production variable will be having n number of production. Now we need to repeat for how many productions, how many components are there. If RHS of it, if it is a variable, then call the procedure for that particular variable. If x1 is a variable, call the procedure for variable x1. Otherwise, if it is a terminal, get that replacement of that particular x1 by that terminal. Then advance your input pointer to the next symbol. Else, if it is not a terminal, if it is not a variable, then indicate that it's an error. This is how this recursive descent parsing works. Now, consider this grammar. This is a standard grammar which they may ask you to explain by yourself, or you need to remember this grammar. This is an example of your recursive descent parsing wherein the recursively same procedure is called, hence it's called backtracking approach. Now the given string is W is equal to CAD. So start with the start symbol. Yes, you don't have option. I need to call CAD. Once you have the first production, then again one more variable. Again call. You started with the procedure for yes. Then you have a body of a procedure. We have complete component has been made use of. Then again you are calling. We are making invoking this procedure for variable A. Then you have two options as first come first serve from left to right order. procedure for A is replaced by AB. But what we need in your string, I don't have the character called B. So what we need, I will be discarding this. Again, call the same procedure for second part of your production for variable A. Then it will be replaced by terminal A. Then when you scan through character, CAD is output of your given grammar to yield the string required given string. Hence, this backtracking is required mandatorily to obtain the required string in this recursive descent parsing. Then, this is an important concept. One recursive descent parsing is a simple concept. Then, when you are going for next approach called LL1 parsing or predictive parsing, it makes two important functions which has to be understood. It is called first function and follow function. First function says that, so it's one of the function wherein you have to find out result of all the variables of your grammar. What is the result of first of arithmetic expression grammar or any grammar, what the terminals will be obtained. So first of any variable is a list of all the terminals which are derived from that particular variable. Okay. It is having three set of rules that we need to make into consideration. Then follow of variable. Again, we need to apply for all the variables. It has to be result of all terminals which is there immediately after to the right of that particular variable in some sentential form. Okay, so this again having a three steps that has to be followed. So once you are thorough with identifying all the terminals for first and follow, it means that once this result is ready, you are ready for top-down parsing table, predictive parsing table construction. Example, for this arithmetic expression grammar, I need to find first and follow for all these 5 variables. Okay, first is open bracket and ID. So we have that step, we have got this result. Now we need to start building our top-down parsing table. We see that we want non-backtracking approach. So here when you call it as LL1 table, first I'll indicate that we are always scanning the input from left to right, and second I'll indicate that we are following a LMD process. Okay, then here one indicates that we are always taking care one input symbol at a time. Make sure that your LL1 input grammar should be free from all the prerequisite. Okay, then applying the first and follow, if the result is ready, then okay, your result is ready, then you have two steps. To fill in the contents of your LL1 or predictive parsing table, there are two rules. First is for a particular productions, example E tends to TE dash. Consider that to create a parse table, so you need to create a template of it wherein number of variables will be equal to number of rows and number of columns will be equal to number of terminals you have, and last column you have to reserve for special symbol called dollar. Okay, once you create that many row and that many columns, then you take production by production. Okay, consider this M of E comma, okay, apply this. So you take first production. For a complete RHS, find out what is first of this T dash. What is first of T dash is equal to first of T. First of T is what? What we have got already. First of T is nothing but open bracket and ID. So under this row number E, on open bracket and ID, I need to write the entire production. E tends to T dash. So this has been written completely. Then again, let's go for the second production. Find out first of alpha. First of alpha is nothing but first of plus T dash. So you have leftmost position itself plus. So under the row E dash on plus, so write the entire production E dash tending to plus T dash. And also you have epsilon production. Whenever you have epsilon production in your grammar, find out follow of E dash also. What is there in follow of E dash? You have, okay, you have two terminals, that is closing bracket and dollar. Under all these terminals, under the row, same row, second row, E dash on under closing bracket and dollar, write E dash tending to epsilon production. Closing bracket and dollar, write that production. Then again find out for first of FT dash, so you are getting first of F. First of F is same as open bracket and ID, write the entire production. Similarly, first of star FT dash under T dash on star, write the corresponding production. Then again when you have epsilon, find out follow of T dash. Follow of T dash, again you have closing bracket and then dollar as well as plus. Okay, under all these insert T dash tending to epsilon production. Then last row we have find out first of alpha, that is first of E within braces, nothing but open bracket under row F under open bracket. I need to write the complete production. Then you have one more terminal, F tends to ID. So first of terminal is terminal itself. So under the row F on the terminal column, introduce entire production. This is how you are creating a top-down parsing table called LL1 parsing table, which is also called predictive parsing table. Okay, so this is a summary on that particular grammar what we are using. These are the rules what we apply. If there is some component in RHS of your production and one terminal is able to obtain for first of alpha, that result will be placed. If you don't have terminal, that is epsilon is there, see the follow of LHS variable. All those columns will write that given epsilon tending production. Okay. Next, bottom-up parsing. So bottom-up parsing is the second type of approach, wherein we start always from the given string, then again we apply n number of reverse process, we call it as reduction process, and finally we see the start symbol of your grammar in the last step. That type of reverse process is called rightmost derivation in reverse order, which is mainly applied for efficient type of parser. Okay, and all the automatic parser generator tools adopts this kind of bottom-up parsing approach only. We start from all the characters of your given string and work reverse process till you reach the start symbol. It's a reverse process. Okay, now the reverse process of this process is called reduction process. We find out that concept with the help of handle. What is meant by handle? If you see that any part of your grammar production is unique identity, that's which can be replaced by corresponding LHS variable is called wherein beta is considered as unique identity, a unique terminal which can be replaced by LHS variable. At that time, beta is considered as handle. That replacement is called handle pruning. Okay, so this reduction process is applied right from the given string till you reach the start symbol. So that approach is called handle pruning. Now we go for different types of bottom-up parsing. We start with shift reduce parsing, then we go for different types of LR parsing. In our syllabus, we have only SLR parsing. Then we adopt operator precedence parsing. Okay, so now as we saw in earlier example, bottom-up parsing always starts from given string. So example has been given here. Given the grammar and the simple string, okay, in the normal derivation process, it's always starts from E and obtain the given string. But in bottom-up approach, is this a top-down approach? In the bottom-up approach, what we need to start with string and we get the start symbol in the last step. To help in that, what we need to do? Obtain RMD and apply the reverse process, that is called RMD in reverse. So get the RMD, then see that. So with the last string, what is identified? This ID is considered as a handle. It can be reduced to LHS variable F. So that is being done. Then again, you see that F is replaced by T. That is being done. Then again, T is replaced here. T star, it is there as it is. This ID is also replaced by F. That is done. Then again, once you have got T star F, that can be replaced by T. So then T star F is replaced by T. Then finally, this T is reduced to E. That process you got, we get the bottom-up parsing. Starting from here and you reach the start symbol. So that is called right sentential form, identifying the handle and reduced by LHS variable. Shift reduce parsing is one such type of bottom-up parsing wherein it performs standard 4 functions and it makes use of data structure called stack to hold all the grammar symbols, variable or terminal or both, and to store your input it makes use of input buffering. Then how do you do that? To start with, always stack will have default symbol dollar and your input buffer will have given string terminated by dollar. Once we finish processing of your characters, identifying the handle and doing the handle pruning process, finally you need to have start symbol in the stack left out without any characters in your input. Then only we call this configuration as success configuration. The 4 different actions to be performed are shift the characters from input buffer to stack called shift operation or reduce operation or accept in the last step, or if you're not able to either shift or reduce, call error function. Now for this grammar, for this simple string, we have this shift reduce parsing where stack input action. So to start with given string, then what we see is shift ID1. Start with always apply shift operation. Shift ID1. When you see that top of the stack is having an handle, it's an independent entity. So that can be reduced by LHS variable according to production. So reduce ID by F. So that is done. Reduce operation is called. Then again we see that this F is also handle. It can be reduced by T. That is done. Then again we don't have any option. You need to make sure that you have remaining symbols here input. Shift that star into stack. Then again shift ID2 also into the stack. Again ID2 is again a handle which is present at the top of the stack, reduced by LHS variable F. Then again when you have T star F, complete this is considered as handle reduced by LHS variable T. Then only T is left out, no characters are there in the input buffer. Then this T is reduced by LHS variable A, which is the start symbol of your grammar. Then we call the acceptance function. This is how shift reduce parsing works. Next we go for our complex type of bottom-up parsing called LR parsing. Shift reduce parsing doesn't have any parsing table, hence it is accepting only few types of grammar. Okay, so this is more suggestible type of bottom-up parsing. More number of grammars are accepted in this compared to top-down approach, and it can identify syntax error easily and it can be corrected. All programming languages makes use of this standard approach. It is a standard parsing method known, and there are three types of approach here. Simple LR called SLR with one token at a time, canonical LR or LALR called look ahead LR. These are the three types we need to understand here in LR approach. There is one more called operator precedence parsing, which can also be considered. In any LR parsing, again we need to perform either shift or reduce or accept or error by looking into the contents of your software program written to perform this. We need to take a decision when we need to perform shift, when we need to reduce, when we need to perform, when we need to say that it is accept. So that is done with the help of software or program called LR parser driver program. Okay. To start with any of the LR parser, we need to start with LR0 items construction. What do you mean by LR0 item? LR0 item is nothing but a grammar production having dot in RHS of your production. Having in some place dot indicates it's an item. When it is there at the leftmost position, it means you are starting your process now. When it is there in intermediate position, means these earlier symbols are processed, these are remaining symbols are to be processed. When it is there in the rightmost position, it indicates that all the symbols are already processed. Okay, so having the RHS with some dot indicates that it's an item. The collection of all these items have to be made as one particular state. We call it as canonical collection of LR0 items. This has to be done first, then we are going for creation of parsing table. So this is a grammar given. Before you start with, first the given grammar has to be converted into augmented grammar. For that, the given start symbol has to be connected to new symbol, introduce a new symbol, yes, and add additional production called new symbol connected to old symbol. That production we call it as converting your original grammar to augmented grammar. Then to start with your item construction, this new production has to be started by placing dot at the leftmost corner. Then what is that we need to do once you start with this process? When you see this leftmost position dot, after that you have variable E. Invoke all the variable E productions into your list. Okay. Then what are the E variables? You have E tends to E plus T as well as E tends to T. Again place a dot at the leftmost corner. When you place dot at the leftmost corner, okay, then again you come across variable E which is already been taken care, then variable T. Again invoke all the T production, place dot at the leftmost corner. When you place, you have terminals ID and open bracket. So then you can't proceed further. This collection of all these production having dot at the leftmost corner, we call it as first state or state number 0. This is what is written here. Then we need to apply. Okay, again we need to keep shifting this dot until you reach rightmost corner. So this is I0, first state is done. Okay, then apply, keep on applying from this is done with the help of closure function. Then you apply goto function, find out I0 on this variable E. What is happening? Okay, dot when you apply goto function, dot will be shifted one position towards right. Okay, then when it is reaching the rightmost corner, no other production is there. This we call it as next state. Then again you have one more production. Okay, what all you have, keep on applying. For variable E you have to take together. For variable T you have to take together. Okay, and so variable T once it is been done, E tends to T dot. For variable T E you have to take simultaneously. Before it was there dot, now it has come afterwards. Okay, then after dot you have plus, so you can't continue. So that is the next step. Then you need to apply again for ID. You will get one more state. You can apply only again for open bracket, which will deal with this. So you will get this particular set. So this keeps on repeating until you don't find any other go-to functions to be obtained. The collection of all these type items we call it as LR0 items, and this type of automata representation is called DFA representation for LR0 items. Okay, it's called state transition diagram. Then we need to write an algorithm to construct SLR passing table. So you have a common driver program, you have SLR passing table, okay, and in that passing table, how many partitions are made? You have action and go to. Okay, so when you see here, you have construct action column and go to column. How do you fill in the contents here? To action and go to from your items. Okay, what is constructed till now, that is been explained in this previous algorithm. This algorithm always make sure that in your constructed I0 till I8, whatever the set of items you have, if your grammar dot is after dot, if you come across terminal, then apply goto function from that item on the terminal where it jumps. Then I need to apply shift operation with the subscript where it is jumping. That subscript is the state number with the shift operation. This becomes first action. If dot is there rightmost corner, then what we need to do is call reduce operation and write this complete variable. Okay, and then we need to mention where and all. I need to apply for a where and all. You have follow of LHS variable. Under all that, I need to mention by reduce. Then you have one more augmented production having dot at the rightmost corner. Okay, then at that time under the row that particular item on that special symbol, I need to place accept. This will be done only once. Okay, hence it can be done, applied only once. But rest all I'll be applying shift first rule or second rule n number of times. This is done for filling the action column. For go to column, for all the variables, because in go to you have only variables. So under that particular item on that variable, if you are jumping to some state number, okay, so you need to see that from that item state on that variable, if you are jumping to some state, that state number itself is a destination. You don't have any other rule. All the other, if you are not able to apply either action or column, all the blank entries are called as errors. To start with, we need to apply always augmented production having dot at the leftmost corner is the first step. So by following these rules, we have filled in for your arithmetic expression grammar. We have terminals as plus ID, open bracket, closing bracket, dollar, and the go to we have ENT. So by applying the rules, we got this grammar. Okay, but still, what are the problems of this LR0 parsing? Sometimes there is a problem that more number of entries can be obtained in a single cell. What type of entries can be there? It can be shift reduce conflict or reduce reduce conflict. At a time we can have shift also or reduce also in a single cell or reduce reduce also. Okay, if you are able to apply both shift and reduce operation, that type of confusion or conflict is called shift reduce conflict. And if you are able to have more than one type of reduction opportunity, that conflict we call it as reduce reduce. Example, see here, for some grammar, for some entry, not in all the places, in some entries, for zeroth row on open bracket terminal, we have both shift as well as reduce. Similarly, for this column, okay, you have multiple entries. At that time, there is a conflict involved in this LR0, particularly for SLR passing table. When you have multiple options, that is a limitation, you cannot proceed further. Only if you take proper decision and take manually that either shift is suggestible or reduce is suggestible, then ignore the other one, then it's possible to select any one thing and proceed further for string processing. Otherwise, if you have multiple entry, you cannot go for string verification. Then you cannot call it as valid SLR passing table. Now this is till here it is done with the fourth module, which was dealing with syntax analysis. Now we go shift ourselves to fifth module, wherein we deal with three important components: syntax directed translation, intermediate code generation, and code generation. So first we go for syntax directed translation. In this syntax directed translation, mainly after semantic analysis, to automate the process of semantic analysis, we are using this syntax directed translation to generate the modified parse tree, and in the automation process to generate intermediate code, we need to make some evolution or changes in your grammar. Okay, so that grammar, the changes what we make, we will be done in the form of syntax directed definition or syntax directed translation rules. So what are those rules what we are writing will be in this form. Okay, the two such methodology what we adopt is, first one is syntax directed definition, wherein for your given grammar production, okay, it is adopted with some attributes, code attributes or any other attribute you are making usage of. Example, here the variable e is assigned with attribute code, and then here right side also we are attaching some attributes. Along with that, it is written variable e, variable t along with the operator plus. This is a rule what we need to invoke when you want to use this particular production. Okay, the semantic action, the translation in rules what we need to perform is, when you when you have this action to be performed is print this action. So these are the new rules column what we need to include in the grammar production. That definition and rules are called semantic rules. This is a modification or extension to your grammar production with additional attributes. So attributes can be anything, code or value or node or anything. These are the attachments made to the grammar. Now, how many attributes you can make use of? There are two attributes: inherited attributes and synthesized attributes. Okay. Wherein, when it is inherited, it means that it can be inherited from the parent of its, okay, or from its siblings. What type of attributes is called inherited? Okay, now this is a standard example. It can be asked when they ask you to create a new type of parse tree called annotated parse tree. Okay, modified parse tree called annotated parse tree with the new rules. What is there? That new semantic rules attached to that. So this is an example of this annotated parse tree for some arithmetic expression. At the time, knowing that rules, okay, we need to first get its value. Then that value is assigned to its previous level, that is assigned to t before you perform for multiplication. Then again you need to fetch the value of that token value, and it is assigned to the previous f node. Then we need that t star f is required as per the grammar production. Then that is assigned to LHS variable t. Then that is assigned to variable e. Then before you go for addition, okay, then we need to get the token value of that digit, okay, for 4. Then that value is fetched for f. Then f is assigned to t. When you have e plus t, then only you can go for assigning that to LHS variable e. Then that is assigned to augmented variable l, wherein the complete value is stored over there. So complete calculation what you had, e star phi is 15. Then 15 plus 4 is 19 is stored into given variable l. Okay, this annotated parse tree can also be one form of semantic syntax directed translation, or it can also be constructed with the help of dependency graph, wherein you have both dotted lines and solid lines. Solid lines gives the values passed from one level to another, and then dotted lines indicates the actual grammar production. This is helpful for you to evaluate the syntax directed definition. This is one of the order for some grammar for generating some particular value. Okay, this is one output what is used. This is called a dependency graph. Next, we have, as I said, there are two types of attributes: inherited attribute and synthesized attribute. So when you are getting the attribute from other, when you're not getting the attribute from your parents, only from the siblings and the lower level, it's called synthesized one. So that type of definition we call it as S attributed definition. Okay, so this is evaluated by bottom-up approach only. This is mainly used in your LR parser, the post-order way, and it is adopting, hence it's called synthesized attribute. And again, the type of attribute what we are using in inherited attribute is also called L attributed definition. We are creating a dependency graph which adopts a top-down approach always, moves from left to right. Example, this is using a bottom-up approach, topological order dependency graph. This is using a inherited attributes. Okay, inherited attributes here are type inherit. Okay, all these are the inherited attributes used in this syntax related definition. Either you can go for inherited or synthesized attributes. Okay, now when you are embedding this in the rules of your grammar, this can be adopted either in the form of S attributed definition or L attributed definition. This which will help you to build an efficient parse tree called modified parse tree, which is given as an input to intermediate code generation, which helps you to perform that action traversal from left to right using pre-order or post-order methodology. So S attributed makes use of pre-order and top-down approach, and when you are going for inherited attributes, it adopts L attributed definition. It builds a parse tree with the help of annotation, and it adopts a reverse method called bottom-up approach, mainly adopted for LR parser, or it can also be using a recursive method also. Now we shift ourselves to next part of your component called intermediate code generation. Once semantic analysis generates output in the form of modified parse tree, okay, then that modified parse tree is given as an input to input intermediate code generation, wherein output will be getting in this stage as standard intermediate code. We call it as 3 address code as output, which is the end of your front end. From that, we are going for back end stages. So when you are generating an intermediate code, that intermediate code can be resembling your input program, which is called high level intermediate representation, or it can resemble to the backend output, resemble the target code. It's called low level intermediate representation. So any level, any number of levels of intermediate representation can be generated. Now for that, input will be the semantic rules, what is required to create an intermediate code. Now, either you can go for syntax tree construction. Now we say here the given expression, how do you construct a syntax tree? Okay, you need to first divide into two halves, left half and right half. Okay, left half it is having anything within braces has to be evaluated first, B minus C. Then again that is given as an input to star operator, star is missing here, and then it is given to LHS variable, one more component A, that result is given to plus its LHS component is A. So first of result is available here, then again you go for B minus C. Again B minus C is created, then that is given to star operator with RHS component D, then that RHS result will be available in this node. Then complete LHS and RHS is merged with the help of middle operator plus. This is how syntax tree or parse tree is created, wherein there is a duplication here. See here, B minus C is created twice. Even though it is part of a single expression, it is been created twice. And again, A is been also encountered twice. This is again a duplication. Duplication with respect to single operand, or it can be a part of expression. That duplication is avoided by creating directed acyclic graph, which is a modified form of parse tree. Okay, that parse tree, it tries to make sure that once you are having B minus C, that is directly given to star for A. Then again, when you want for next level plus, it is calling the same level where A is already obtained. No need to create once more A. Then again, for RHS of your expression, once you want B minus C, it is just connecting to the existing root where that result is available. Again, once B minus C is available, go for the next level. Then we have to apply for multiplication. And then again, as usual, go for integration of plus and star. In this way, we are creating an efficient parse tree wherein duplication is avoided with respect to part of your expression or an operand. This type of compact representation wherein efficient target code is efficient tree is represented is called directed acyclic graph. Now, once you are creating a directed acyclic graph or syntax tree, it is adopting some rules with the help of functions called leaf functions or node function. Leaf functions will help you to create a leaf for some identifier, and it is begin entry into the symbol table. Okay, entry for that identifier A. Then again in the given expression, all the leaves have to be identified. Then for particular operation, I need to call node function. Node function will have operator and two arguments, LHS argument and RHS argument for that operation. And that result also should be saved in temporary variable. Okay, even for leaves, for all the terminals, leaf functions have been called and it will be saved in some temporary variable. Then for all operands of all operators, and it's after performing that operation, it will be saved in temporary variables. Using all these functions, we are creating this parse tree what we have shown here. So here leaf function for B, leaf function for C is created. Then only I can call node function for minus, wherein its argument is B and C. Then again I'll be calling, once you need to define leaf function for A, then only I can call node function for star. Then again I'll call node function for plus, then for star, before that leaf function for D has to be done. Then I'll be calling once again node function for plus. Okay, this way there will be modification even for that compared to syntax tree. Now, when you want to create a parse tree, the data structure used are static way arrays, wherein it uses an array representation where all the terminals will be stored in few rows. Then your few rows, remaining rows will be used for node function. All the leaf function will be called id pointed to your symbol table for that identifier. Then constant 10, it will be available directly. Then plus C is available, but plus where is the argument present? In the row number 1 LHS argument and row number 2 RHS argument, that is directly taken. Then for assignment, LHS argument is the I is nothing but the again row number 1, then RHS argument is row number 3 previous step result. Okay, hence assignment operator will make use of this result. This type of standard static method is called array data structure. This is an for arithmetic expression I is equal to I plus 10 directed acyclic graph and its implementation using array. Now, this is a detailed description about it. Okay, how did we made use of this? All the terminals and all the nodes. Okay, then right hand side how we are computing LHS and RHS argument. Okay, this is opcode value of that particular operation. Then, when you want to make it in a dynamic way, we can use the hashing concept where you are using a bucket involving n number of headers indexed by the different types of linked list with depending on how many components you want to insert in that particular bucket in header. Okay, so this is a hash value and it will be indexed by different types of nodes what you are inserting. Okay, to implement this the intermediate code, the standard representation what we are using for syntax tree or for directed acyclic graph DAG, the representation what we are using is 3-address code. Why it is called 3-address code? Because you have at most one operation and two arguments to perform that operation, and you are saving in one of the LHS variable. This standard representation having 3 arguments and one operation is called 3-address code. And any 3-address code will have this is a standard representation what we use for as intermediate code output. It's having 2 components. It's address representation and its instruction. Okay, so at most one operator can be assembled at a time, or it can be taken only one operation at a time. This can be used both for syntax tree as well as DAG. It will be having address and instruction. What are the ways to store address? It can be name of the program or name of a temporary variable, or it can be constant or compiler generated temporary variables. Then what are different types of instructions supported in 3-address code? It can be binary instruction or unary instruction or a assignment instruction or unconditional jump or conditional jump with true or false value or conditional with some condition with some relation. Okay, or else with respect to procedure call, listing all the parameters first, then call that procedure with indicating total number of parameters. Then with the help of indexing, you can have indexing either in the RHS or in the LHS. Then you can also have pointer assignments with the help of ampersand and star that can be in the LHS or in RHS. These are the ways 9 formats where you can make use of in your 3-address code representation. Then when you are creating a 3-address code for this do while loop, It can be done in two ways. First one is you are going to create I plus 1 into temporary variable. That temporary variable is assigned to LHS variable I. Then again, for any intermediate code output, before you make use of array representation, it has to be multiplied by some constant, which is called depending on the word length of your computer. It can be 8 bits or 16 bits, depending on that you have to multiply. Once that is done and it is ready, then that temporary variable has to be assigned for one more temporary variable to take that array indexing. Then we need to compare whether that T3 is less than the given variable. If it is satisfied, then repeat this loop. Instead of you are assigning a symbolic label, you can give line number for each and every step of your pre-address code directly. Then you can assign to that line number only. This is another way. You can go for any of this method. The choice of operators. User is having a choice what type of selection you can make use of, which helps you to generate an efficient intermediate code. Now, out of all the choice, now to implement this three-address code, we have standard 3 steps: quadruple, triple, indirect triple, and fourth one is static single assignment form. Why it is called quadruple? You are having 4 arguments: operand 1, argument 1, argument 2, and result. Since you have 4 columns, it's called quadruple representation. Okay. Now the same arithmetic expression it's been given here. Okay, A is equal to B star minus C plus B star minus C. For that, we have written a 3-address code. Minus is the unary minus operation. That minus unary minus is operand operator. C, there is no second argument. And then T1 is a temporary result. Then again star is the operator. B and T1 are the arguments, and T2 is the LHS variable resultant column. Similarly, this way of representation is called quadruple. Now, and one more way of implementation is 3 columns, wherein you don't have resultant column. The same syntax tree or DAG parse tree representation, we need to write the 3-address code. Then you need to store it in the triple form. Again, same minus first argument is C. There is no resultant column. This array indexing itself will have that result. Then again, star is the operator. B is the LHS argument. Where is the RHS column present? Result. T1 is not at all stored somewhere. It is fetched through that array indexing. Similarly, for T3 is not available anywhere, that array indexing too. Then again, T2 plus T4 is not at all available in resultant column. So array indexing, those columns 1 and 3 is being made use of. Then in the last one, for assigning, the LHS variable should come in first argument. Then the resultant column, previous step result where it is stored, has to come in second argument. This way of representation is called triple. Then indirect way of representation of triple is called indirect triple. The given address of triple representation is being assigned to one more new address. So then instead of directly fetching that address, we need to fetch first the contents present in that 35 location, then that actual value present in that location. This will generate an optimized intermediate code. Hence, we are going for this indirect triple. Then fourth form is called static single assignment, wherein each and every step of your 3-address code should be assigned to unique LHS variable. Okay. Then if it is assigned with multiple times, then it may be overridden with the earlier value may not be stored. It will just apply the new operation as it is coming. When you see this intermediate 3-address code as an intermediate code, when you are seeing that P is coming here, then again Q is made use of what is there here. Then again Q star D is again repeated and it is being saved into same variable multiple times. So earlier it was having A plus B, now it is saving Q star D. So A plus B result is not at all available now. To make sure that it has to preserve the old value, we need to assign unique value for that with the subscript or superscript. So we are assigning unique value for each and every LHS variable by subscripting. So now it is having P1 minus C, that is assigned to Q1. That Q1 is multiplied by D. We are assigned to one more new value called P2. Now P2 is having multiplication result, P1 is having additional result. So in this way, preserving the earlier computation with the help of new value assigned for each and every variable. Uniqueness in each and every variable is called static single assignment. Duplication is avoided. Then again here we are taking one more example. X is equal to -1 and x is equal to 1. Same x is represented multiple ways. Now, when you want to compute which else value has to be applied, for that, to apply this function, again we need to apply the subscript 1 or 2. First, we need to finalize and to take the value of x1 or x2. Once it is decided, then that result is assigned to x3. That can be adopted for your computation multiplication with a. Okay. This is how we need to adopt each and every unique variable for any computation. This is called static symbol assignment, fourth form of implementation. This till now it is static the intermediate code. Now we are going for the last part of your fifth module, which is code generation, which is having only few topics, so we can cover easily. Once you have intermediate code or code, the next step is the last stage of your compilation, that is target code generation in the form of assembly level language notation. You need to convert your 3 address code into assembly level language notation with the help of symbol table components. Now, it has to preserve the original meaning and generate efficient assembly level language notation so that it can be fit in to any type of assembler. But there are some challenges or issues involved in any of the code generator. Okay, it has to make sure that there should not be any NP hard problem involved. Okay, we need to say that whatever generating whatever we are type of intermediate code we are generating is an efficient or not. Okay, and again whatever type of assembly level language we are generating, is it efficient or not? So we cannot gauge that. Okay, hence it is called NP hard. Okay, and it's only based on the approximation algorithm or heuristics we can decide how much it is efficient or accurate. Okay, now the main important functionality in code generation is to select the proper instruction to convert into required assembly level language notation, depending on what type of machine architecture and how many registers are available and how many we need to assign for my intermediate code. Then how do you order the way of instruction? The ordering is also important. So 3 stages are selection of type of assembly level language instruction, number of registers available and using, and number of ordering of the assembled instruction. Now, there are some standard issues involved in the generation of code target code. First and foremost issue is whatever type of 3 address code, whatever you have used is standard or not. Whether you made use of quadruple or triple, or if you have used the bytecodes or stack machine, or if you use in order or post order form, whether you have used syntax tree or DAG, which all combination has lead to the proper intermediate code or not, for which you are giving an input to the code generation. So we cannot say that. We cannot say which one is efficient. This is one such issue. And second important issue is whatever type of target code you are generating, assembly level language code, either you are targeting for RISC or CISC, we are generating a target absolute machine code or not, or we are generating a relocatable machine code, or what type of target assembly level language code you are generating to which instruction set. Deciding which one may lead to efficient assembly level language code is again a challenge. And third important is how many types of instructions which are available in my target machine. How do you select which all instructions are simpler? Whether should I go for complex instruction set or simpler instruction? Level of intermediate representation what we have generated will help you to generate a required instruction to be selected and to generate a required assembly level language code. Okay, so what type of instruction have to be fetched? Okay, what quality I need to meet based on that. Okay, it has to take into consideration speed and size also. So again, selection of right number of instruction for my correct input program is a challenge. The fourth issue is how many registers are available in that target machine and how many I need to pick from that particular available registers is again a challenge. I can use only one register, I can make use of 3 registers for my computation. How do you say that which way is correct? So this is again a challenge or issue. Then, once you are done with your understanding, with your knowledge perspective, you have created one list of assembly level language. How do you evaluate that? The way of evaluation, it has to go with LHS to RHS or RHS to LHS. So that again, it's a evaluation order is again become a complete challenge or an issue. So which affects your efficiency of your target code. So picking the right approach is a completely NP hard problem still now. The orders cannot be predefined or standardized. These are some standard 5 issues which are not being finalized in your code generation phase. Any simple target machine model should have set of basic instruction execution to be allowed. Load and store or computation or jump, condition or unconditional, and byte addressable n number of registers what are required. And different types of addressing mode: direct, indirect, indexed, indirect, indexed. Okay, immediate, n number of addressing modes what you have learned in microprocessor, all those can be made use of. Then what are the costs involved in your code generation? The cost will be usually default 1 plus by the added to the type of operand what we are using. For register there will not be any cost, and for memory usage constant value is 1, and for the final length of your program will be the total number of instruction cost you have made use of. Example, the different types of instructions. Example, load instruction, load the contents of x into r1. Similarly, store the contents of r1 into x. Then perform subtraction of r2 and r3 and store in r1. Unconditional branch to that some particular label. Conditional branch if less than 0. So different types of addressing: direct, variable index, immediate index, indirect, immediate. So immediate indicates hash, indirect indicates at symbol, index indicates array usage. Okay, different ways. Immediate index 100 is used, indirect address. Then again different ways are there to make use of that notation. Some examples are being given here. Suppose if you have sequence of high level language instruction. Now, what is it to be done in generating assembly level language? Load the contents of this not into Y. Then perform the addition of R0 with respect to Z and store it into R. Then store the contents of this R0 into given variable X. This is a assembly level language. Now, if you have sequence of statements, it has to be done one after the other. Load the contents of B or C into register. First, you have taken B, then perform addition with C, then you are storing back into variable A. Then again load back again A into R0, add with E, then again store back into D. These are additional example. When you are performing subtraction, load any one contents into one register, and again if you want, both the variables can be loaded, and then you can go for subtraction and store back into given variable. Then array indexing, as I said, array indexing has to be multiplied by some constant which is depending on the word length. Okay, multiplied by some constant, then only you can go for its operation. Then again its result has to be given separate location where it is available after that multiplication. Then you go for actual loading of that A of R1 into one more register. Then that is resultant register is stored back into B. Then again x is equal to star p. So load that p into some variable. Then again fetch that contents. Address of that contents has to be stored into another register that is available into given LHS variable. These are some additional examples for array indexing or pointer variable. Okay, till here it is all about the issues in the code generation, which is the last topic, and some examples of target code generation. So till now we have completed all the 3 modules as an overview. Okay, is there any questions with respect to any of the topic? Anyone?
If the students have any questions, they can unmute themselves and ask, or you can type it on the chat window and we will take the questions. So I don't think there are any questions, ma'am. So on behalf of IEEE Bangalore section, I thank Dr. Nagavini ma'am for delivering such a wonderful lecture, and I hope that the students will make use of it for their exam preparations. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir. I thank IEEE Bangalore section, Gaurav sir, and then Pushpamala madam for their constant support in conduction of this event successfully. Thank you, one and all. Just stop sharing, sir.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.